Hello teachers. Student rapport, a very, very important aspect of learning. The key education theory for this video is Abraham Maslow. He was a human motivation expert. He studied many things and developed key theories in developmental psychology. His key study came in 1943 when he released some research on human motivation. Education, neuroscience and cognitive psychology often overlap, as I'm sure you've noticed already, and this is one of those classic examples of psychology and educational overlap. And here you can see Maslow's hierarchy of social needs diagram. You could call it a taxonomy if you wish, but it's just a diagram. It's sometimes known as this hierarchy of social needs. You can see the key component areas, from most important obviously at the bottom of the foundational needs, which is physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and of course self-actualization. In more detail, physiological needs are the basic factors that any human needs basically to survive. Things such as food, water, air, shelter, etc. Now, I've obviously worked with a lot of children in the UK. Things are very different in the UK. It's very common to see children lacking one of these needs, coming in incorrect clothes or ripped clothes, clothes too small or too big. Children who are hungry. I've taught a lot of hungry children. And this is a difficult situation to be in the classroom because that basic fundamental need is not met, which is where safeguarding and child protection comes in, which is why I often stress on safeguarding so much. Okay, you might have noticed reproduction on there. We're dealing with children. Maslow, as a human motivation expert, he studied humans and adults. So some things are applicable to children, some are not. There's obviously one that's not. Safety needs, next one. How does your classroom feel safe? How do you encourage personal security? Do children feel safe or scared in the class? What's the language you use? How do you compliment? How do you reward? How do you tell a child off in a caring way? So that's where that fits in to your role as a peri. Love and belonging. We know that children without friends do not learn effectively at all. This is one key area of reciprocity, as it's known, the social aspects of learning. How do you create a warm atmosphere, not to say loving, but you know what I mean, where a student feels a sense of belonging? Esteem. Children with low self-esteem, we know they don't make sufficient progress. We know that. How do you build their self-esteem? How do you do that? How do you praise a child? If you've got a difficult child, or perhaps a special needs child, catch them being good and pounce on that. Praise them when they're good. Catch them being good. Give them something you know they can be good at. Catch it, praise it, and go overboard with it, and you watch the other areas of the lesson will gradually fall into place. Finally, self-actualization. A student reaching their full potential and then being aware that they're reaching their full potential. Students who underachieve and don't self-actualize, we know naturally they don't have a growth mindset and basically they do not achieve. Think about setting high expectations at the start of a lesson. How do you start a lesson? Let's set those expectations of what we're going to achieve. This is closely linked to our teaching standard number 1, which is setting high expectations, which is also a teaching standard in the QTS England teaching standards for PGCEs. So how do you set high standards? How do you set huge goals? How do you push them to achieve it? When a student feels they're really achieving their potential, then you're onto a very big win situation. At the start of a lesson, set your expectation immediately. Have that conversation with the student, form an agreement for what you're going to achieve the lesson and how you're going to get there, and plot that journey through the lesson. Include mini plenaries. This is mini assessment tasks through the lesson to show that they're reaching your objective. Always conclude the lesson with a lengthy plenary. A plenary is a final chapter of a lesson where you just talk about the learning and show and demonstrate the learning that's happened within that time frame. This needs to be a direct measurement against success criteria set right at the start of the lesson, which will be agreed. The early win, which I described, is sometimes known as a bell task. So you often give them a task which is quite easy to achieve within the first minute or so of a lesson. Think about this. What can you give them that they can do within a minute of a lesson and feel a sense of achievement? As you can see, this diagram shows how the needs intertwine and overlap. Now think about your learning environment. How is it safe? How is it welcoming? How is it warm? How do you welcome a student when they come to your lesson? What do you say to them? Have you ever noticed how I welcome you to our music department? It's a welcome I have to admit I've practiced and perfected over the years. I'll shake your hand, I'll make strong eye contact. Males, I'll shake your hand with 2 hands. I'll look excited with an open posture and I'll welcome you to the department. I want you to know I'm happy that you're here. Think about the same thing with students. What do you do when they walk into the room? Do you stand? Do they stand? Do you sit? How's your posture? How do you sit? If they look anxious, how do you react? Think about these things as you start your lesson. One of the classic techniques is called the 5 yes technique. When you first meet an individual, I have to admit, I'm sorry, I've done this to you many, many times. If you want to make a human, individual or a child, bearing in mind we're talking about human motivation, if you want to make a human comfortable of any age, you make them say yes 5 times. So you deliberately ask questions the first time you see them. You ask questions you know will get a yes answer. For example, hello, you made it. Of course you made it, you're here. That's a yes. Did you have a good weekend? The answer will be yes. Nearly everybody has a good weekend because it's not work or school. Now, if you can get students to add a sentence or an elaboration with the yes, then this is gold. If they say, yes, I had a great weekend. I went to the Jurassic Park fair and then I did this and I did that. Your student is immediately calm, they immediately feel safe, and according to Maslow's theory, they're immediately ready to learn. Find out about them, find out everything. Try and remember these things. Remember their dog's name. Remember their sister who's studying in Australia. If you really want to be thorough, write these things down. Pull these things out, pull them up, show you're going to know these people, that you're trying to know about them as a person. All these factors create excellent student rapport. Another technique you might want to explore is modelling. Yes, I'm very, very sorry. I do this to all of you too. Sorry, all my secrets are out now. 5 yeses, now modelling. Okay. If you want to make somebody feel relaxed, research tells us you copy or model exactly what they do in terms of their posture and the way they sit and certain things like that. You also try and mimic certain ways in which they speak, the rhythm and certain things such as that. If you see a student is particularly anxious or unengaged, you should probably sit in your chair and look as relaxed as possible. So you would do the opposite, in fact. So think about your posture, the way you sit. Think about modelling techniques. And think about if the student's anxious or not. The whole point is to get them as relaxed as possible and ready to learn.